Hey guys, so last time we met in video we talked about properties for algebra. We talked commutative, associative, and we talked about identity. Well, we left the most important property out because it needs to be talked about on its own, and it's called the distributive property. Now, it is the most important property that exists especially for algebra, because it's the only one that if we didn't have this property, there would be a lot of math problems we couldn't do anything with if variables were involved. So the distributive property. So let's give a good definition to the distributive property. The distributive property. And the distributive property allows you to multiply a sum, that means plus, adding, or difference, or subtraction problem, by a number. So what's unique about the distributive property is that it involves two types of operations, okay? So again, we're going to have multiplying, so multiply with adding, or multiply with subtracting. So it's the only property that we're going to talk about that actually has two operations going on in it. So that's pretty darn important. The other thing is you might have the situation with parentheses, but what's inside the parentheses in the grouping symbol, you can't do the math in there. So the only thing you can do is, if we have the distributive property, you can multiply the outside number by everything inside. So I'm going to write that down. Multiply all terms inside parentheses by the outside number. Okay, so multiply all terms inside parentheses by the outside number. Now the other thing that's super interesting is that the parentheses disappear. So when you do this action, just like when we did the action of taking an absolute value, when we took the absolute value symbols went away. So I'm going to give you a kind of a cute little demonstration. Is, let's say we have a b times an a plus y. According to the distributive property, we're going to multiply the b times the a, and we're going to multiply the b times the y. And if we put them together, we would have baby. Okay, so that's what the distributive property does. Now, there's not always numbers or variables that are inside. Sometimes there's numbers there as well. Now, generally speaking, when we give properties, we use an algebra example, so it's full of variables, but I think that just might be a bit much. I am going to talk to you about two different ways that we use the distributive property just for doing math, and then I'm going to show you how we might be doing it on our homework. Okay, so let's start with how we would do it and it's kind of weird because I'm going to tell you, so we'll go to the next screen. The book is going to tell you to find the product mentally, and I'll explain to you what they actually mean by that, because it's not what people take that to mean, where you're doing everything in your head and nothing on the paper. But you have to show steps. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take a larger problem, and it's going to be beyond the scope of our math facts, and we're going to break it down into two smaller problems that is going to make the calculations easier. So for example, let's say we have 9 times 36. So how this relates to the distributive property, you might say, well, I don't see any parentheses here. We're going to create those parentheses. And what we're going to do is we're going to break 36 into its place values. So that means 30 plus 6. Okay? So then what the distributive property says is we're going to multiply the 9 times the 30, and whatever operation is inside, which happens to be plus on this one, that comes next, and then we're going to multiply the 9 by the 6. So this is how we're breaking up this problem, and then we should be able to multiply 9 times 30 in our head, because 9 times 3 is a fact 27, and then there's a 0 we added, and then 9 times 6 is a fact 54. And then chances are we should be able to add these together mentally, and we get 324. If not, you can do a little work off to the side. But these are some things that you're going to be asked to do. Now, sometimes you're going to be asked to multiply a whole number by a mixed number, and we can do the same thing here, but instead of splitting the 2 1/4 into a whole number and whatever, or into the 2 into 2 pieces and so on and so forth, we're just going to split it into whole number plus the fraction. Oops, sorry, that should be black. So then what we're going to do is we're going to distribute, and we're going to get 12 times 2, and then plus, we're going to get 12 times 1/4. So we're going to be, again, using skills from early chapters. So 12 times 2 is 24, and 12 times 1/4, well, 4 goes into 12 3 times. We add those together and we get 27. So we're taking a complicated problem and we're showing the steps, but all the calculations are in our head because the math has become easier. All right, how about 2 times 3.6? Well, just like with the fraction one, we're going to split our decimal into the whole number plus the decimal. Okay, and then we're going to do our math. So we're going to go ahead and multiply 2 times the first guy. Oh, sorry. And we get, sorry about that, plus, and then we're going to distribute the 2 times the 0.6. And I'm just going to write 0.6. Okay. So the tricky part is remembering with decimals. 2 times 3 is 6. That's easy. And then 2 times 6 is 12, but there's one digit after the decimal point, so I really get 1.2. So then I end up with 6 plus 1.2. Well, the whole numbers add, giving me 7, and then I'm left with a 0.2. Okay, so the next one is going to be a little frustrating because we won't actually be able to get down to a number. Anytime we involve variables, they tend to like to stick around. So this one is the directions they're going to say, use the distributive property. to rewrite each algebraic expression. Okay, so this is what it looks like. We're going to have 3 times the quantity, x plus 1. So we're going to take the outside 3 and we're going to distribute it. So distributing means to share. So we're going to share that 3 with each number inside. So we're going to have 3 times x, and then it says plus, and then we're going to have 3 times 1. And we do whatever math we can do. Now, I don't like using that plus sign, so I'm going to make it 3 times x, and then 3 times 1 is 3. Now, we cannot add those together. Why not? Well, that's because if both numbers don't have the same variable, I can't do math with them. So this is as far as I can take this problem, but at least it's one step further than what I started with. Okay, one more and then we'll be done. Sometimes the number they want us to distribute is in the back. It's no different than what we did before. We're going to multiply the outside number. Let's make him a pretty blue. And he's going to get multiplied, and we're going to multiply him by the first thing inside of the parentheses. So that's 5 times x, and then it says plus, and then we have 5 times 8. Now sometimes that sign inside can be a minus, so just be forewarned. I'm giving you a lot of pluses. And then we do the math we can, and we get 5x plus 40. Now 40 doesn't have an x, so I can't add it to the 5x. So that's it. And that's done, and we'll talk more about this together in class. All right, bye now.